knocking on the gavel here. If we can get started tonight. Welcome everyone. I'm Dave Bartholomew, and along with my co-chair Fatima Moore, we are serving as the Met Council Nominating Committee co-chairs. Thanks for joining us for this evening's public meeting, either in person or in St. Paul or streaming online. We're going to start first by just introducing ourselves around the table here so that you know who's on the nominating committee that's here tonight. Mohammed, let's start with you and we'll go around this way.
I'm Mohammed Alimu from Bloomington.
Okay. I'm Charlie Zelli from Minneapolis.
Sam Rockwell, he, him pronouns, and I am from Minneapolis.
I'm Molly Cummings and I am from Hopkins.
Janet Williams and I'm from Savage.
I'm Dave Bartholomew and I'm from Circle Pines.
Fatima Moore from the city of St. Paul.
Heidi Garrido from Hopkins.
Chelsea Glavitz-Gabio, Roseville.
I'm Adriana Jarab, she, her pronouns, and I live in Minneapolis.
David Ively, Eagan, Minnesota, he, him pronouns.
Jim Erickson, Minneapolis.
Melissa Vanderscheid, St. Paul.
Okay, great. And we've got some staff here from the Met Council to help us out tonight. We have a cohort of candidates we will hear from over the course of the evening. Each candidate will have 10 minutes for their interview. Within those 10 minutes, the candidates will answer 3 questions that we sent in advance and answer any follow-up questions for clarification from the nominating committee. There will be a staff member keeping time, and they will give the candidates verbal notifications at the 2-minute and the 1-minute mark. And that's, you're going to be doing that, okay? So there's who you're looking for at 2 minutes and 1 minute. Please note, we'll also take a break or two during tonight's interviews. We will keep these to a minimum so we can keep the process moving forward for everybody involved. At the conclusion of the interview process on Tuesday, January 31st, the nominating committee will recommend a group of candidates to the governor's office. The governor will make the final decision on who will represent the Metropolitan Council and has until March 6th, 2023 to do so. And so we want to let you know that it's about time to get started with our interviews. And that's great. So I think first off we have Donald Mullin. Okay, great. So welcome and thank you for your interest in the Met Council and serving as a council member. Please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and then share your pronouns if you'd like. That'd be great.
My name is Donald Mullin. My last name is spelled M-U-L-L-I-N. And as far as an introduction, I get asked this question a lot, and I'll tell you that my biggest thing is I'm a husband, I'm a father, is my biggest piece of that. I work at the St. Paul Building and Construction Trades Council, so I'm a construction guy, as they like to say. I've been in the trades for 28 years. It's been my life, and it's been a great career for me. So
okay. So what we're going to do is do the 3 questions. We have committee members who will ask them, and we'll start with the first question.
Thank you. So Mr. Mullin, what policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Okay, first I want to say thank you all very much for your commitment to doing the interviews, and I really appreciate that. There's 2 really big policies for me that kind of align with my values. One of them is the equity, and it's kind of like a career exploration for me. I think there's some great opportunities to be doing some work in this space, and really think that we can, and I understand that there are a lot of great people doing some great work, but just think that we need to do more and look for some different options. One of the things that I talk about in the building trades, we have a Minnesota Trades Academy that offers a summer jobs program that lets students, as they're kind of moving from that junior to senior year in high school, explore different career opportunities, and I think that this would be a great place to do some of that work there. The next for me is transportation. Transportation has been something that I've really wanted to push on and see us do more. I think there's some great opportunities to expand transportation in the area. And again, I know that the council's doing great work in this space, but just to think that we could be doing more. I live in White Bear Lake, so one of my favorite things to say is I'd love to figure out a way that I can go get on the train and take it to the airport. and not have to park down there. Not that it's a bad thing, but that would be the great thing. So those are the two big things that I'd like to see, I'd like to take on.
All right, I'm next here, sorry, taking notes. Thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. So could you tell us a little bit about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders?
Well, you know, I've served on this school board in White Bear Lake for 8 years, and I chaired it the last 4 years. So being in that space has always been something that we've just done and moved and had other commitments outside my job. So those are the rooms that I love to be in, and that's the work that I love to do. The one thing people ask me all the time, do you miss miss the school board? And the thing that I miss the most is I miss the work. So that's just a great place to be.
Mr. Mullin, what have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
Boy, you know, I'd like to say that we've done a lot. I'd just say that what we can always do more. That's important to continue to advance it. You know, on the school board, and even outside of the school board, there's a group of students, and every year they just kind of rotate through. I still do this work around mentoring young students about their career pathway, because that's how important it is. The one thing that I tell every student in school, and not only up in my district, but districts around, I do that work. So I'll tell you, it's important to know that every student at one point is going to have to pick a career. So the sooner that we're talking to them about those career possibilities and opportunities, the better off we are. So I've been really doing a lot of work in that space. Also, I continue to work on programs such as the Driver's License Academy with Ramsey County, providing driver's license or helping students get driver's license, looking into that future. We're working on a car loan program to help them and kind of partner them up with financial institutions around getting cars and car loans. So they're out there as they're purchasing that first car, they're purchasing a good car and not something that's going to break down and create a bunch more problems in the future. And then lastly, one of the things that we just started working on, so it's at its infancy, is home loan programs. Seeing that that's probably the next step in this piece, and how do we kind of let people, kind of help people kind of venture into that space. As you know, housing is a big deal, and a lot of our young families, our young kids that are getting out of high school are priced out of the market. So we've really got to look at that space and how we're doing it, and then making sure that they can show the way or have a pathway into the next stage of that.
Are there any clarifying questions anybody has about any of the answers that are given, the questions were asked?
Chair, I was wondering if we could ask the second part, question number 2 was kind of a long question. Maybe we could repeat the second sentence and give the applicant a chance.
Okay.
Tell us about your public engagement that you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
I always continue. I go out and talk to, not only do I work through the White Bear Chamber, doing work there, I work through the St. Paul Chamber. I'm always in that space of talking to businesses, seeing what they need. You know, as they've kind of looked to this, they're some of the job creators of the future, right? So looking at those spaces. So I continue to do that work, so that's just, would be something I would continue on doing anyways. I don't know if that kind of was healthy enough.
How are we doing on time?
4 minutes.
Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to close with?
You know what, thank you all again for your work. I really appreciate it. I know this is a big time commitment, so thank you all for what you're doing. Thank the Met Council for their work in that space. I know they're doing some great things, and pleased to see it, so have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so next on our list we have Susan Vento. If you could, we'd like to have you pull the microphone maybe a little closer here and speak into it so we make sure we catch it all. Thank you.
I have a former first and third grade teacher voice, so if the microphone goes out, I'll make sure you hear me. Can be very loud if I have to be, and I've been known to even stand on tables to get 6-year-olds' attention. Many, many moons ago, I haven't done it recently. My name is Sue Vento. I'm very honored to be here tonight to talk with you about my application for the Met Council. I am currently in the final weeks of my first term as a member of the Met Council, and I thought a lot this last summer and fall as we were coming out of COVID about whether or not I should reapply, and I decided I had to. Because I'm being kind of selfish, but it's good for me to have the structure of the council meetings and all of the activities involved with it, but also because I feel like there's unfinished work that I want to be a part of. I don't even feel that I know that there's unfinished work I want to be a part of. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Ms. Vento, thank you for being here. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing, and what?
That is a very tough question because I think all of them are important, and I know that I can't say all of them. So what I've narrowed it down to is public engagement. It's not a policy issue as much as it is an important piece of policy for us as a council. In order for us to really meet the needs of cities and townships, of counties, of families, of workers, both in the Met Council and in our communities, we have to be publicly engaged. And I think the more often we really look at what we're doing and how we're doing it from a planning standpoint, making sure that we're every step of the way doing public engagement in a meaningful way, I think it's critically important. Mr. Mullin made reference to White Bear and transit. And one of the big disappointments was when the city of White Bear determined that they did not want to be a part of the Purple Line, or what is now known as, what was then known as the Rush Line and is now known as the Purple Line. And it became difficult because you had new players moving in and out of the process, and keeping that public engagement going is really, really difficult. So I think we need to recommit ourselves. I want to say one other thing as it relates to the planning piece. This council does amazing work. Tonight at our council meeting, we had a presentation on lessons learned during COVID. The presentation was wonderful, and I wish everybody could see it. But the work that the council did during a totally unpredicted, challenging time was amazing. And throughout it all, the buses were running, the housing inspections were occurring, the waste treatment system was working, and it was even doing research that was noted in the New York Times and in other national news entities. So the planning piece is really important, but in addition to planning, we've got to talk about with the community and with the citizenry what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that we want their input so that they feel like they have a piece of the process and feel like they can own the final result.
All right, well, perhaps continuing on the theme, council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council and committee meetings and district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. So could you tell us a little bit about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders?
First of all, thank you for that 20 to 40 hours change. That was one of my early learnings. It was that 16 to 20 just didn't do it if you wanted to really do the work. So for me, the public engagement is going out and introducing and reintroducing myself to the staffs and the leaders of the townships and cities that I will represent, engaging with the county commissioners and their staffs, participating in any committee or discussions that they're having that overlap with the work of the council. A couple of examples, early on in 2019, pre-COVID, and for those of us on this current council, there's pre-COVID, which was just a little sliver, and then COVID, which was a big chunk, and then post-COVID, which has been another little sliver. So we kind of measure everything by COVID, so at least I do. But early on, I had the opportunity to go out and meet with the city staff and some of the elected officials in Hugo. And following that, a few months later, I got to go on a city tour in Hugo, and this is something the city of Hugo does every year. They take a big school bus, they fill it with new citizens in the community, not all of the new citizens, because that's a really bustling, growing area, but new citizens, along with elected officials and an appointed official, and we get to see what's happening in the community in terms of economic development, in terms of housing, in terms of affordable housing, and also in terms of their parks and open space. And it's really a great way to get to know the community. A similar thing happened in Columbus. The Public Works Director, the city administrator, and the mayor loaded me up in an SUV, and they took me around and they showed me what they were doing in Columbus, which was great because as I told them, and I've told them this more than once, I used to drive down 35 and I'd see this sign for Columbus and I'd think, what is Columbus? And it is most definitely an exit you need to take because it's an interesting community. And so that has been a great experience. Likewise, I've had the opportunity to go out and do one-on-ones with county commissioners. I've participated in some planning sessions that have been occurring along County Road E in Gem Lake, White Bear, and Vadnais Heights, and also on Highway 120 in the East Metro area, which borders Washington and Ramsey County. So those kinds of activities are the things I love to do. I've also been involved with, I had an intern that I worked with here a couple years ago, did some interacting with. And so those are the kinds of public engagement that I really enjoy. The other piece of the public engagement for me is also engaging with the staff. And those of us on the council who have done a ride-along with the HAT team, the Homeless Action Team is an amazing group of Metropolitan Transit staff, police department staff who go out from about 11 until 4 in the morning each night and help get homeless people into shelters. And that experience will never leave me. It was, and that kind of public engagement, both with the staff and then with the people they were finding housing for, really was incredible. So that's the kind of public engagement that I like to do. And finally, attending council and township board meetings. That's a great experience as well. The first township board meeting that I went to in Linwood Township, which is up just west of Stacy and Forest Lake, I got there and the place was packed and I thought, oh my God, they must really hate the Met Council, this place is packed. And I was actually kind of nervous about it. Well, it turned out that they were there because they were frustrated with the lack of broadband service. I was so relieved. They ended up calling me back to a meeting regarding broadband service, which I was happy to go to. I knew they weren't going to skewer me.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vento. What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
That is a great question, and the most honest answer is I have not done enough, but every day it's something I remind myself of. And the equity lens is one that all of us here at the council, whether we're an appointee or a staff member, takes very, very seriously, and it's part of all of the work. So without a doubt, it's very important. One of the things that really appreciated is the learning opportunities, both with our planning retreat type sessions where we learn about each other and we learn about the experiences we've had. We're a pretty diverse council, and so I've learned a lot from my colleagues. I've also had the opportunity to participate in the Tribal State Relations Training, which was begun under the Dayton administration and is coordinated by the Department of Transportation and is taught by faculty from the UMD American Indian Studies program. And if you ever have an opportunity to do it, I strongly encourage you to do so. I'm talking too much, I apologize. I want to say just a couple of other things about the equity piece. I've also learned that equity includes issues related to physical and mental capacity, economic capacity, age, and geographic equity. And several of us on the council who represent areas that include townships and the outer ring suburbs are really committed to making sure that we as a council address the needs of those areas of the region as well. Much of our work is driven by what's happening in the most populated areas, but there's more work to be done, and that includes that greater part of the region, and we're committed to that. In terms of personal standpoint, on my documents that I turned in with my application, I list a number of the nonprofit boards that I've served on, and with all of those, equity has been an important piece of it. Currently, I'm serving on the Friends of the Mississippi River Board, and equity is just a mammoth part of the work that they're doing along the river.
Any clarifying questions for anybody?
Does time permit another question?
Nope.
Clarifying?
I mean, you actually want to clarify something, go ahead. We got
No.
30 seconds left.
No.
Okay.
Oh, bummer.
Okay, so great. Well, thank you very much for coming here and for applying to be reinstated. Thank you.
And if I could close with just a quote, a Martin Luther King quote. I was going to try and work it into one of my other responses and I failed, but I think it's a great quote and you folks exemplify that here tonight. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And what all of you are doing tonight matters, and the decisions you make are really important, so thank you very much.
Okay, so that is our District 11 folks that we're going to interview. And now, since we're not sure who's all here yet, we'll probably just at least take a short break, and then Sam, I don't know if you can make sure we know who's all here and when. And as soon as they are, we can, as soon as they're all here, we can start up and things.
Absolutely. Maybe just a quick show of hands
Sure.
for the next round of who are the District 12 candidates that are here. So we do have one District 12
Okay.
candidate for right now.
So we'll take a short break, and as soon as we get a couple more people in here, so we can just go boom, boom, boom in a row, that'd be great. So, thank you. We'll take a short restroom break.
Start, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
get started.
Can you get the microphone way down there? Can they hear you too when you ask your questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, I think they should move that microphone when
Okay.
they're answering.
Yeah, especially when you're asking a question.
Okay.
Great. So you have one there for
Unless you
yourself?
guys at the end are gonna talk.
We can pass it around.
Are you ready to go as far as
We'll ask for the
camera
mic.
people ready to go? Okay. Okay, so now we'll get started with our interviews. Now we have District 12. And so we have 3 candidates joining us, and I think they're all here, so that's great. And so first we would like Maria Aquino-Duran to join us, please. So welcome. The process is tonight that we're gonna have you introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and then sharing any pronouns if you'd like. And we wanna welcome you and thank you for your interest in the Met Council and for serving as a council member. And then when you get done with that, we have 3 questions that we'll be asking you. So please share your name.
My name is Maria Aquino-Duran, Aquino-Duran.
Okay.
And pronouns are she, her. And first, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to interview before the committee. It is my honor.
Okay. Well, we have 3 questions that we'll get started with, and you have a total of 10 minutes. And then we have a woman over here who's gonna hold up a sign or tell you when it's 2 minutes left, and then when there's 1 minute left in the total 10-minute piece. So in the total 10 minutes, the hope is to get these questions answered and any other comments you want to share with us.
Good evening. I have question number 1 for you. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
For me, it would have to be transportation. Transportation is in my background, it's what I know. Aside from the work that I've done personally, I know how transformative having good public transportation is. I grew up in New York City. I was an immigrant. And growing up in Queens, my parents were able to get good jobs working in Manhattan, which was 12 or 15 miles away. And if it wasn't for good public transportation, we wouldn't have had those opportunities. Our lives would have been different. Also, public transportation allowed me to go to my high school. I went to a specialized high school in Manhattan that opened up opportunities for me. And again, without public transportation, none of that would have been possible. Also, transportation is also important just because we are a growing area, growing metro area. And if we want to continue growing and, making our community a better place to live, public transportation is going to be inherently a part of that.
Wonderful, thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council committee meetings and district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. So can you tell us a little bit about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders?
Well, I would hope that I could meet with the stakeholders in my district. I know there's 26 cities, municipalities, townships, and that's quite a lot. I don't know if I would get to every single one of them, but my hope is that I would be able to meet with the community leaders, whether it's the mayor, city council members. I also believe that public engagement is important. You need to not just hear what the elected officials are saying, but also what are the people in that community, what do they want, what are their needs, what are their thoughts about whatever it is, whether it's transportation, water, the parks.
Thank you.
Please share what have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
So in Minnesota, I've been able to volunteer extensively. One of the organizations that I volunteer with is called Moms Demand Action. It is a gun safety advocacy group. I was one of the founding members and was a co-lead for quite a few years, and I'm the co-lead for Stillwater. In my volunteer activities for them, I've been able to really see, have interaction with different members of the community, and I think that something like gun safety, even though it's separate from what we're talking about today, it's an issue that is tied to equity, because I think it's, communities that are urban, communities, people of color, they tend to be disproportionately affected by gun violence. And so in trying to reduce gun violence and promote gun safety, it's not just great for the people who are traditionally adversely affected by it, it's great for just the community as a whole. And I think to me, that's a great lesson, because sometimes the things that you do may not just be beneficial for one, it could be beneficial for everyone.
How much time do you have left?
5 minutes and 32 seconds.
Okay, so those are our 3 questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us or tell us about?
Well, I would just like the council to know my commitment to public service, and that in addition to Moms Demand Action, I also volunteer with a much smaller organization called the St. Croix Valley Human Rights Alliance, long name. And our goal is to promote, I'm sorry, I have the exact wording here. We work to promote equity, justice, and inclusion for all individuals in the St. Croix Valley. We support local community programs. Currently, we're in the process of putting together a little free library that's going to be installed in one of the local Stillwater parks. We've read some books regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we are making this library, including those books that we read, as well as books geared towards children and younger, so that we can spread the message of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've also had a chance to mentor, different attorneys throughout my career, and mentor some students from my law school. I can tell you that I am a beneficiary of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Before moving to Minnesota, I worked in tort litigation, and tort litigation is a field that is dominated by white males. There were many times where I was the only woman in the courtroom other than the court reporter. So I know what it feels like to be a minority, not just in my skin or being my culture, but just being the only woman in the room. So I think having gone through those experiences, it makes me more aware of how those adversely affect others, and how I'm cognizant of how can I make this less traumatic for other people.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else?
I just want to again reiterate my commitment to public service. That's why I applied, and I hope that I've answered your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, any clarifying questions from the committee? Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Next on our list for interviews is Gail Cederberg. Welcome this evening, and thank you for your interest in the Met Council and for interest in serving as a council member. If you'd like to, please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spell your last name, and share your pronouns if you'd like, and then we'll start questions.
Alrighty, my name is Gail Cederberg, spelling Cederberg, and my pronouns are she and her.
Great. The first question for you this evening, what policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Well, just quickly start out too by a little bit more introduction is that I've lived in District 12 now for 25 years. I'm a retired civil environmental engineer with decades of business in development along the Metro Green Line Transit Corridor, among the Metro, and throughout Minnesota and the US. And I'm really dedicated to sustainable development. I am absolutely most interested in working on the water resources policy issue. That is in my wheelhouse, and water is such a strategic regional resource and critical to the quality of our life. I understand that the 2050 water resources policy plan is being updated from now to 2025, and I think this would really give me the opportunity to dig in, use my strategic skills, my technical skills, my water issues background to really add to the planning that's needed to integrate all the water resources issues affecting the region, the council, and the district. And we really need to integrate all the water issues so we can plan for sustainable growth over the next 20 to 50 years. You know, many think that the land of 10,000 lakes, we don't have any water problems, but we know we do. We have too much infiltration and inflow. We have not enough surface water retention. We have impacted groundwater. It's affecting our infrastructure and the quality of our life. I think by updating and really planning ahead with the 2050 plan, we'll be able to integrate a lot of issues to really be able to make sure that we're building a good infrastructure, spending our money wisely, but also because the council is such a large region, we want to make sure we're not leaving any community behind or any person behind while we can still protect our homes and our environment. So I really think that this is where I would fit and would put my best resources in the water resources policy.
Very good. Thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council committee meetings and district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Tell us a little bit about the public engagement you can commit to doing in your district with community and business leaders, please.
So I have a two parts to my public engagement that I think are both really, really important. And one is District 12 goes from Forest Lake, Scandia, down to Cottage Grove, down to Denmark, through Woodbury. You know, it's a huge district with lots of communities. And they all have similar challenges, but they all have very different challenges and opportunities. And so as a council member, I really need to get to know them, do a lot of public outreach, meet with a lot of people, a lot of organizations, tribal watershed districts, tribal communities, anybody who wants to meet with me, because I want to make sure that people know how to contact me, that I can listen, that I can bring back their issues, and that I'm available. And I think that's really critical to making sure that people feel welcome into the council. I think the second part of engagement I commit to working on is increasing and growing the STEM pipeline and talent base needed for the region. I'm a woman in STEM. I have been my whole life. I was told when I went to high school I should major in history because girls don't go into science. I proved them wrong. But there's a whole group of people that need to be coached into careers in STEM. And so this robust workforce is needed to be able to really build out the plans and programs that Met Council is wanting to do. So I think by leveraging the Met Council trade communities and partners and raising awareness through schools and communities, we can coach people into learning about STEM careers. Throughout my career, I've mentored and coached many job seekers who thought, I can't go and do STEM. Well, can you weigh something? Well, yes, I can. Well, then you can go into a lab and weigh something on a balance. You can do that and get into a STEM career. And because I'm retired, recently retired, I have the time to commit to this kind of engagement.
Thank you. What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
So throughout my whole career, I've been advancing equity, and I just think that I've always been an agent of change and welcome people to the table. That's just who I am. That's how I was raised. It's what my mother and father taught me to do. But a recent example of advancing equity is the work I've done as part of being on the board of directors for Environmental Initiative and as the past finance chair. You know, Environmental Initiative is a nonprofit bringing people and communities who are most impacted by environmental issues and nonprofits and public sector to solve and to really dig into environmental issues. So in 2020, the board of directors and the team at EI, we embarked on a very, very equity-focused strategic plan. This really different. I mean, it was, we are going to do things and focus everything we do at EI through the lens of equity and inclusion and social justice. Did this make us popular with all the people who were giving us money and donating? No, it didn't. You know, we lost money. Some people said it wasn't the way we wanted to go. We decided this is what Environmental Initiative was going to do. An example of an outcome was the development of the Northside Safety Net in 2021. Northside Safety Net means Neighborhoods Empowering Teens, and it's a multi-year paid internships for BIPOC youth in North Minneapolis. And it welcomes and brings BIPOC youth into environmental careers by partnering with environmental organizations, Hennepin County, companies, and it really allows them to job shadow, work on projects, see what STEM careers are like, and it's really another way to bring youth into STEM careers. They've completed 400 hours of learning, 49 environmental professionals have helped, they've completed 19 projects, and 24 community organizations have been engaged. Now you think, how do you go and fund something like this? You know, organizations have projects and money that have donated to this. Well, as finance chair and I was treasurer, we went and looked at Environmental Initiative's reserves. And the pandemic, you know, hit things hard. And we thought, let's take some of those environmental reserves and kick this project off and fund this project. And that allowed other people to step in and say, well, if EI is funding this, then we'll join in and fund this as well. And so we've got, 3 years of funding for this, and we will continue to start other programs. The other thing this did was say, well, if this was so successful, let's go ahead and every year look at our environmental reserves, knowing we have to refund it, to keep our reserves at a certain level. But what other pilot projects should we put on our list of projects every year to fund equity and social justice projects? So I will bring this intention to the work on my council. I ask tough questions. I'm not afraid to ask why. I'm not afraid to say how come. And I think that's part of welcoming people and breaking down barriers and making people have opportunities for everybody. So.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, or any clarifications from the committee? Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, you can see I'm passionate about water. I'm passionate about serving. I'm passionate about coaching people. I do get random phone calls from, somehow my name has gotten out there. Gail will read your resume and help you get a job. And, and I do, it's like, well, Gail, so-and-so told me. And as an example, one woman, she was a technician and she wanted to be a project manager, and her resume didn't say that. And I said, well, what have you been doing? And she gave me an example. That's project management. Let's rewrite your resume to put that up front. And 6 days later, she had a project management job at Cargill. I mean, so it's that one-on-one that I just am invested in doing for anybody who asks me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And I'll just finish by saying thank you for letting me interview, and it'd be a real honor to be part of the council, so thank you.
Great, okay. And next up is Cecily Harris. Welcome to the interview tonight. You know, we want to say thanks for your interest in the Met Council, and you've heard the part already before about introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing your pronouns if you'd like, and then if you want something to start with, and then we have our 3 questions.
Terrific. Well, good evening, nominating committee and chair. I'm Cecily Harris. That's Harris. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Thank you. I'll ask you the first question. It is, what policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing, and why?
Thank you. I'm most interested in everything related to the funding, expansion, improvements to parks and open spaces, as this was my career and it'll always be my passion. Regional parks and trails are the jewels of this metropolitan area and need our focus for operations and maintenance, as well as new development and natural resources restoration. Parks and trails connect communities through circulation, socialization, lifelong learning, active and passive recreation. So I was an employee, volunteer, nonprofit board member, city and state council member, and elected special district director for parks and open spaces. So for 35 years, I worked in policy, trail and site planning, program development and implementation, alternative funding for various organizations and agencies. They used to call people like me park rats because it was in our veins. My undergraduate degree was renewable natural resources, wildlife sciences. I also earned an MBA and nearly completed a degree in landscape architecture. So this education led to a fabulous career in this field. I have a very regional view for park and open space management, akin to an ecosystem perspective of wildlife biologists like myself. We see the interconnectedness of waterways and land masses, maybe like an urban planner might see cities, road infrastructure, and neighborhoods and housing and businesses. I've served 4 years on the Met Council Park and Open Space Commission, also 4 years on the Park and Trail Legacy Advisory Committee, and strive to understand and be informed of conservation issues of the past, currently, and in the future. I've also written numerous grant applications and loans for land acquisition, habitat restoration, trail and facility planning, design and development, environmental education, and interpretation for cities, state parks, national marine sanctuaries, and national wildlife refuges. And through this work, I've also learned a bit about roads, bridges, drinking and water systems, because parks have all of these things. They're not just about campsites and recreation centers. And as you can probably imagine, I'm a very active user of parks and trails. I like to hike and ski and snowshoe. I also like to kayak and paddleboard, and Washington County, which is District 12, is blessed with 12 fabulous regional parks and trails. Thank you.
All right, thank you much. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Can you tell us a little bit about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with both community and business leaders?
Great. Well, today I serve on several nonprofit boards and do some consulting work for nonprofit agencies and California municipalities. But I have a lot of flexibility in my days, nights, and weekends. So to best serve the Met Council community as a director, I would of course attend all these scheduled meetings, committee of the whole, and any assigned working groups or advisory committees and events. I would also really strive to attend special meetings, community meetings, partner and stakeholder events to continuously learn, but also to communicate with colleagues and staff and constituents. I would strive to visit those 1 or 2 council or board meetings every month. As someone said earlier, there are 26 cities and townships in Washington County, and 2 a month is very possible, as well as, planning commission meetings, community meetings of nonprofits and events. So I would do the best I could. Of course, I would also respond to the constituent emails. I believe that community engagement is crucial to everything that the Met Council does. Getting feedback from residents, businesses, nonprofit organizations, civic and community organizations is essential to build our regional facilities. And continuing to improve the avenues to reach underserved and less vocal communities has always been a goal of mine. Newer Minnesotans from other states or territories, as well as immigrants and refugees, can offer equally good ideas as longtime Minnesotans and decision makers. So of course I would pay a special attention to Washington County where I live. And parts of that county are very rural and unaffected, and others are growing rapidly. But both demographics really need good infrastructure, roads and public transportation, drinking and wastewater systems. So I would also really learn about what's happening in the other districts and in the other counties in the Met Council region.
And the third question is, what have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
Okay, so during my 18 years in local government and 17 years in nonprofit organizations, I primarily worked in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is extremely diverse. Although I did go to high school in St. Paul, and I'm a 5th generation Minnesotan. So the metro area I lived in California, was very diverse, with people speaking many languages, many first-generation immigrants, visa holders and refugees, people living in vast socioeconomic extremes, think Silicon Valley, and people with a wide range of physical and mental abilities. You learn a lot about the needs of the people in different areas. It may be different service needs in different languages or adaptations for people wanting to use facilities. As I was a commissioner for a city and for a state agency, and also a special district director for 2 counties, I learned a lot about the needs from distinct neighborhoods to really populated counties and what different people might need. And it helped me raise money, awareness, and develop programs to serve them. So working in diverse communities, and in fact, the community I lived in was about 44% white, so I think that's pretty diverse for not being San Francisco County. But that information informed and empowered me to work on policy and planning to enable whole communities to access parks and trails and recreate in public programs and facilities. Equity needs to be available for all, ensuring that information and access to buildings, trails, signage, everything needs to be available to welcome people to programs and services. And I'll give you a couple examples of my California equity work. I developed a park shuttle program that brought people from diverse communities to some of the popular county parks. And this was a free program, a shuttle that went in loops. I also worked on brochures and interpretive signage that was translated into other languages, so the visitors to parks and open spaces would know what the resources that were available. Here I served on the MPAS Equity, State Arts Board, and St. Croix Valley Foundation Valley Arts Grant Review Committees, which have really helped me learn about the diverse peoples and programs and projects and how to support them in their work. I greatly thank you for considering my application for Met Council District 12 Director. I'd be humbled to be selected and honored to serve the Met Council area. So of course, I welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions from any members of the committee? Okay, you got a minute left, otherwise, thank you.
Well, again, when I first moved here, Met Council was one of the agencies I was really curious about, and the San Francisco Bay Area, they have the Association of Bay Area Governments, which has a lot of the same planning functions that Met Council has, but they don't have parks and trails. So I was very curious, and I really wanted to learn, you know, how this metropolitan area approaches planning, you know, in a large regional area that's growing very fast, you know, both in, you know, in diversity, population growth, hopefully in business growth as well. So, you know, that's why I'm here this evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think at this time, thank you very much. That was our District 12 candidates. Now we've got a little bit of time, and so maybe I think it might be great for the committee to go through the green room, because everybody's not here for the next round yet. And
Say one more?
Oh, that.
They back up.
One more.
Oh, they back.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Are you talking about?
On the list.
Back out.
Oh, they let it.
Yeah.
I believe that's
Oh,
no
gotcha.
longer.
Thank you.
So
Didn't know that.
Yep. So we should be good there, and so maybe what we should do is return to the green room or whatever the room is and have some discussions, and we'll come back. As soon as the next crew is here, we'll come back and get started on this. okay with you?
I think that's,
So first off, we're gonna get started. We're gonna start with the District 13 interviews. And we have 5 candidates. We have, I think, 3 that are here, and we'll start with those 3. And so first, we'd like to invite Saray Garnett-Hochuli to the table, I guess, and welcome you, and tell you that thank you very much for your interest in the Met Council and in serving as a council member. If you could start by providing your full name, spelling your last name, and then share your pronouns if you'd like. And then you have some introductory remarks, but then we have 3 questions that we'll be asking. So go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Saray Garnett-Hochuli. It's a mouthful, so I'm gonna be patient with me. It's GARNETT-HOCHULI. My pronouns are she, her. Just a little bit about myself. I am excited for this opportunity to interview for District 13. What drives me is my passion, and I want to be part of something that is bigger than myself. I want to be proactive and plan for the future and be a part of planning for the future collaboratively, not just by one jurisdiction, but for the entire metropolitan area. At the end of the day, our jurisdictional lines are porous. Our social issues are fluid. This body has the ability to proactively address the issues and concerns that are barriers for our thriving future. As stated on your landing page, our desire is to impact our communities through long-range planning and essential services, creating the foundation for a thriving region, which is described in your 2040 and your 2050 plan. I want to be a part of that. I want to proactively commit to thinking big, thinking outside of the box, and thinking collaboratively. I have a background in real estate. I understand the housing market. I understand tax assessment. I understand managing people. So with that, I open it up to the floor for questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for being here. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing, and why?
Well, I'm sure everybody says housing, but I really do mean that. We're hitting a crossroads where the average house in the metro area is no longer affordable. We're also meeting a shortage of supply and demand. And we also have an investment banking situation that is really not available for all folks. And also, in our current environment, we're starting to see the struggles of not having stable housing, which means not having stable homes, which means not having stability for our children. And so when we look at housing, in the past, housing was you buy a property and that you're good. And what we're seeing is our market is changing from rental housing to rental, less privately owned, but who has the ability to own and who rents? And the study that you all are starting to conduct to measure the cost of inaction of affordable housing in 2023, I'm really interested in that study. But beyond affordable housing, housing in general, who has the access? Who owns? When we know housing is a way for us to create generational wealth, housing is a place for us to belong, to commit to our community financially and personally. So housing is really important to me, but on top of that, I'm really impressed and I desire to be a part of the livable communities. Because beyond housing, you have to have a community that you want to live in, right? And focusing on that and focusing on what does it mean to have a livable community, and that means affordable housing, that means housing, good housing stock. That means strengthening our connection among housing, because if you don't have a job, you don't have housing. So jobs, housing, and then services, infrastructure. So those things are a passion project of mine because they're the fundamentals of what does it mean to have a thriving metropolitan area.
Thank you.
Who's keeping time? So, because I'm a talker. Okay, good.
All right, thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Tell us a little bit more about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and with business stakeholders, please.
Right, so not only do I commit to the Met Council and the committee meetings that I would be responsible for and those related hours, I will connect with our Met Council admin team to determine who are the current community and business stakeholders and understanding what those current relationships are. I will consider who is not represented or presented in that list. Not only looking at traditional ways of reaching out to community, I suppose it's not so, this is traditional now, is looking into other modalities of communication as we are leveraging social media. If so, what platforms? Newsletters, which I noticed that we do have, cultural radio stations, virtual and in-person meetings to meet and greet our community and business owners, also surveys. What do people want? Who wants to be talked to and how? Because we also understand that different cultures and communities have different needs. So I am committed to expanding my opportunities, also working with the chamber as well, to really understand and be involved in many different ways, just beyond the committees and the meetings.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization that you have worked with?
I love this question, by the way, because it is the foundation of how we need to be moving forward. And I just want to ground ourselves in the definition and how I understand this question. Equity is perceived in different ways, and I see that equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. But also when we look at this work, it's the social equity and the impartiality and the fairness and the justice for all people in our society. And that is related to policy. Let's be clear. We can change behaviors, but what are the systems that we're operating and functioning in? Are we perpetuating harm without even knowing it? And so now you want to say, Saray, what did you do? We could talk about a definition, but what have you done? So every space that I walk into, this really is important to me, and where I work currently, we've looked at our hiring process, we have looked at our training process, we have looked at our retention, who's sitting at the interview table. This panel is quite diverse, so thank you very much. But those are things that I incorporate into the way I run my businesses. I used to work in the real estate appraisal business, and you all know in recent stories that appraisal, your value may be not accurate based on your race or where you live. And so when I created those appraisal firms, I always made sure I was getting representation that wasn't in the room. And also creating jobs that are, six figures. That's something that I'm really excited for. I brought new people into that industry, and I've consistently done that over the last 25 years. My current employment, we are working with what does it mean to be an anti-racist work environment. We're challenging ourselves during COVID. In my department, we brought forward what we call the metamorphosis, really talking about what does it mean to work post George Floyd in this city, right? And we were able to talk about conversations and really push the divide, and then actually look at the work that we are doing. Are we perpetuating harm, even though in good faith we're trying to be equitable and fair? What does that really mean today? So I've done a lot of this at work. I also do a lot of these things in my personal life. This is not just something I put on a coat and do. Based on my lived experience, I can't take it off. So you best believe that anything I do will be centering that in there and grounding it in it, saying what is this metropolitan area going to look like? Because we know the demographics of our population is changing. And what is it to belong? To really belong and accepted and participating in this city, that's what I want to look at. What are those barriers? And also, it may not be a barrier, maybe it's a policy that we've outgrown. maybe it's a different way of thinking. So I'm talking around things, but the bottom line is I have created and implemented ways of working that encompass all of these things. And if I look at my hiring practices in the last year, I have diversified my executive leadership board. I've diversified my my staff that are reflective of all people. And also the beautiful thing is that a lot of my staff are actually going into positions where they are paid well. So thank you.
Okay, any clarification, questions from the committee? Anything you'd like to add at the end here?
I think now more than ever that we need to rebuild and we need to be a metropolitan area that is glittering. COVID has hit us hard. I'm excited to be, I'm a St. Paul resident, obviously, and I want to see the city and our metro area really attracting the best and the brightest. But not only that, I want our minority students not to go to Atlanta, not to go to California. I don't want to recruit our minority or our BIPOC staff from other areas because of our Fortune 500 draw. I want our people to stay here. I want my kids to raise their kids here. I came back and I want to keep that going. So I thank you for your time and I hope I can be a part of this council.
1 minute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I can leave, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're gonna go with Chai Lee. Welcome, and please state your name and how you spell your last name, and then share any pronouns if you'd like, and welcome to the interview.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chai Lee. My last name Lee, L-E-E, he, him, his. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here, and thanks for the work that you do for the selection committee.
Okay, question number 1 for you, Mr. Lee. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Thank you. The Met Council touches so many aspects of our lives, and so it's really hard to choose. But if I was asked to choose one, it would definitely be work that our HRA does affecting housing, affordable housing. Everything to me is interconnected. If somebody doesn't have a roof over their head, they can't they can't get a good paying job and have a reliable transportation. That means they can't go to a clinic. That means they can't go shopping. That means they can't go to places of recreation. And so everything begins with having a good, safe place to live. As someone who grew up as a poor first-generation college student and growing up as a refugee, I have been on public assistance, and so having the lived experience of coming from a low-income background, and that it informs a lot of the things that I advocate for in the past term that I've served here on the council. And so everything goes back to having a good, safe place to sleep. And our HRA serves about 7,000 people, working very closely with 100 different local governments, units of government, to creatively try to ensure that we maintain and expand good affordable housing stock to the best of our ability. And so coming from a background where I've seen firsthand the disinvestment of policies and resources in communities that have been historically underserved, gives me the passion to advocate for and be passionate about improving housing affordability in our region. I know it's a national problem, but that's what I am the most passionate about here in the council.
Thank you.
So council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. So can you tell us a little bit about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business constituents?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of, first of all, my background is in, I do have experience working in local government, and also I currently work in my day job in the nonprofit sector in philanthropy, and it's a pretty small world, so we have a lot of relationships in the philanthropy nonprofit world. And before I came to the Met Council, I've always been plugged into the community where I live. I live in the lower east side of St. Paul, and so before I came to be a Met Council member, I was active on my neighborhood district council. That's what we call them in St. Paul. In Minneapolis, they're neighborhood associations. But I was active on that board, and then I was also active on the St. Paul capital improvement budget. So that gave me the experience and the kind of motivation to apply for the Met Council in my first term, because I saw firsthand how being a part of a policy body that decides where money goes for capital projects can affect our built environment and kind of address some of the inequities in communities. And also, before I was on the Met Council, I was on the at the time, the burgeoning Gold Line Citizens Community Advisory Council. I had to step down to be a Met Council member, of course. And maintaining all those relationships from those days when I was wearing all those different hats, I brought all those relationships with me here to the council, so that's how I'm able to continue engaging with those different networks in my community, and kind of having a kind of two-way relationship with my immediate community, my constituent officials, and other citizens in informing the work that I do and vice versa.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
Yeah, some of my favorite parts of the job have been being assigned to the different committees. The 20 to 40 hours that you mentioned earlier. Like, for example, I'm on the Equity Advisory Committee and the Audit Committee, and on the Community Development Committee. And one of my favorite things to do is to recruit folks in my networks to apply for the jobs at the Met Council, to get on these committees, be community members on boards and commissions and committees within the Met Council. For example, in the last couple, 3-4 meetings of the EAC, the Equity Advisory Committee, at the end of the meeting, I always remind the community members that we have 200 jobs open at the Met Council. And, anyone who needs a job, just go on our website and look at the 200 job openings that we have. I'm happy to serve as a reference point for people applying for the jobs, to diversify our workforce, to diversify our community members on our boards and commissions. Adding the youth voice. Recently, staff had the amazing idea to infuse youth voices onto some of our kind of policy planning for the next plan. And staff reached out to me, and I was happy to refer a lot of the youth leadership organizations in my neighborhood to the staff people. That's actually, it's the kind of arc of my life has actually come full circle, because I've always been supportive of having youth voice involved in the decision-making process. So about 20 years ago, I was a junior at Humboldt High School, and the then State Senator Steve Kelly from Hopkins was the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and he had the wonderful idea of having the youth voice be involved in policymaking. And so he created a youth advisory board, and I was appointed to that board as a representative from the west side of St. Paul. From the west side school, I live in the east side, but Humboldt is on the west side. And so being a high school junior, being able to have senators and representatives listen to me as a young person helped me understand and appreciate the power of having youth involved in these very bodies that we're a part of. And so I feel like that kind of inspired me to be a Met Council member 20 years later, and I want to continue to have that kind of engagement. In my day job, I run a leadership program where I train and recruit people of color who want to get on government boards and commissions. And in my job before that, one of the many hats I wore for former St. Paul Mayor Chris Coleman was on the inside doing the opposite and taking applications, reviewing applications, and handling the administrative processes for appointment of boards and commissions for Mayor Coleman. So I've been on the inside and on the outside of engaging people, bringing folks into the system, going from the inside to the outside.
Any clarification questions from anyone? Any clarification questions? Okay, well, anything else you'd like to add to your interview?
I don't have anything else. Thank you again for your time and thanks for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Joy Sorensen Navarre. So welcome and thanks for your interest in the Met Council and in serving as a council member. Please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing any pronouns if you'd like. And if you have anything you want to mention, and then we'll get into our questions.
Thank you, co-chairs of the nominating committee, Chair Zelli. I'm Joy Sorensen Navarre, S-O-R-E-N-S-E-N space N-A-V-A-R-R-E. We are gathered tonight on Dakota land, and I'm reminded that our ancestors have always taught us, Mitakuye o Wasin, we are all related. As we start, I did bring along, I have some kind colleagues and friends that made letters of recommendation for me, just 4. Could I pass them around? Would that be okay? One paper clip for each person. And thanks to my family for being here today.
Will you start with the first question?
Sure, thank you for being here. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Thank you. I'm seeking the governor's appointment to the Metropolitan Council District 13 because we are in extraordinary times. The Wells-Flanagan budget proposes unprecedented investment in children and in families, in our economic future, and in affordable housing. We've been waiting for this for so long. All of this will have major impact on our metropolitan region. And when we make serious, major public investments, we must accompany that with reform and accountability to safeguard the common good. I want to do my part for the team at the Met Council at this historic time. So you asked about policy issues. For me, it's the interplay of racial equity with housing policy and management. I bring over a decade of executive leadership on housing issues, overcoming NIMBY, to cite over 700 units of affordable housing in suburban cities, organizing and lobbying successfully for millions of dollars from the state legislature. I have to say that I love the shift that I see within your community development research team here to de-emphasize the term concentrated poverty, instead to focus on broader, more reliable indicators. So in business, I can read financial statements. I consult with major healthcare employers across the country on employment, including equity hiring goals. One of my questions for the Met Council is, how are we doing on our equity recruiting and promotion goals here?
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Tell us about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders, please.
Well, first, regarding the time commitment, as president of Navigate, I've made arrangements within our company to work a 4-day work week. We've hired an additional team member to assist me. The leadership team at our organization is in full support of lending my skills to the Met Council if I would be appointed. Regarding public engagement, many of our most gnarly issues become more clear when people who are most directly impacted are leading the solutions. From a business perspective, we call it consultative sales, helping the buyer understand the need and the value of the solution. From a community organizing perspective, we call it tapping into our shared self-interest. So take our housing challenges, for example. I have relationships with many stakeholders. Beacon Interfaith Housing has a coalition of hundreds of engaged congregation members who are supportive of project-based vouchers. Unbelievable to me that they're working on project-based, but how cool is that, right? The education that they're doing. Sahan Journal, they have a reporter on the housing beat. So voices from immigrant communities are heard. WESCO, my own district council, organizes tenants. The City of St. Paul and the St. Paul Business Alliance has been waiting on the Met Council for a decade to move forward with development plans on a block that they control. I would wonder why that is. We've had conversations over lunch about that. Regarding safety on transit, big for us because our families had 2 tragedies on transit at the light rail stops. Are we consulting with State Representative Carlos Mariani, who also lives in District 13? He's the former legislative chair of Public Safety and Reform Policy at the state legislature. I hope we're working with him on these big issues. And then thirdly, constituent services. They're an important part of public engagement, and I would be attentive. Our company is known for concierge-level customer service.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
I am a proud member of the Mendota Medewakantuan Dakota tribal community. Every prayer with the pipe, every tear in the sweat lodge, every fried bread that's served at the powwow kitchen advances sovereignty and equity. In primarily white organizations, I've taken leadership in 2 organizations to initiate and accomplish multi-year efforts to address institutional racism. I'm a founding board member of the Anti-Racism Study Dialogue Circle, ASDEC, who consults with organizations on anti-racism transformation. In my business, for a small business, we have a team of 12. 6 are white, 2 African American, 1 Mexican American, 1 Puerto Rican, 2 South Asian Indian. And we offer a reparations rate, the only company in our marketplace to do that. So I've learned that advancing equity, that work is never done. But as Mr. Lee said earlier, we have to take care along the way to do no harm.
Any clarifying questions from any committee members? Anything you'd like to add? You're kind of closing.
Thank you. I'm too young to remember the civic engagement that was called the Minnesota Miracle back in the 60s and 70s that led to the creation of the Metropolitan Council. But I'm proud of Chair Zelli's work and the Council's innovative and effective regional planning and operations. I believe that Governor Walz's second term will be judged by history to be another Minnesota miracle. And I'd be honored to contribute to that as the council member for District 13.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Okay, next up is David.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome here tonight, and if you could, we first want to say thank you for your interest in Met Council and for serving as potential board member. Please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and share your pronouns if you will.
My name is David Ackos, Ackos, and my pronouns are they, them.
Would you like to make any opening remarks? Otherwise, we have questions.
Yeah, I guess my opening remark is I am a renter organizer focusing on low-income renters in Eastside St. Paul. I also am housing insecure myself and have been since I left my parents' home, and I don't expect that to change. So that is, I guess, tying right into this first question. I am deeply, deeply concerned about how we do development and who we pay attention to when we do development, and so housing and the HRA, like my prior candidates, is my biggest interest. Love to address this in greater detail. That's just okay, go on.
Okay, if you'd like to go right into it, the same question everybody got, what is your policy issue before the Met Council that you're most interested in addressing and why? Go ahead.
Great. So before I took my job at the Greater Eastside Community Council, I worked at Minneapolis Public Housing Authority for 6 months. I was at the very lowest level. I was an eligibility technician doing means testing for many low-income residents in Minneapolis. I found the process to be deeply dehumanizing for my participants and also dehumanizing for those of us who were forced to say, you can no longer have this critical support because your daughter got a job for 2 months back during COVID. At the same time, my boss at one point told me, David, you don't need to be advocating to me for your participants. You know, there's a 10,000 person waiting list and they're all trying to cheat the system. And I was like, oh my God, this is not the way I want to approach this. This is not meeting my values. And so I found a job where I could deeply, I could really, like that community organizing perspective, really deeply find my shared interest with all the many other people my age, of all different walks of life and older, who are housing insecure and are seeing rapid displacement. So I worked very hard to both advance the key strategy for anti-displacement that was advocated by Eastside renters in my meetings, which was rent stabilization, and then created a renter forum to deeply engage Eastside renters. And I'm very excited to, next week we'll have the City of St. Paul's anti-displacement consultants coming out to hear directly from some low-income renters. Anyway, so housing, development, and how that integrates with transportation, the investments we make, the value of land, and how the land we all benefit from is really, that value is created by the cultures of our low-income communities, our people of color, the value that then gets extracted by exploitative policies that our history allows us to continue. So I'm really interested in taking a deep look at that, both when it comes to Met Council policy and also how the Met Council does engagement.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Tell us about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders, please.
Yeah, so I have strong relationships with district councils across St. Paul, and I would be very excited to continue building on those relationships to make sure that especially lower income residents are engaged on these policies. I have worked very hard to ensure that stipends are available for renter forums, and I think engagement that prioritizes, number one, bringing in the people who don't have the free time, free money to come in and engage on their own. I think that's where engagement needs to happen, and that's where I would dedicate as much of my time as possible. I will say in my conversations with people, typically no one knows what the Met Council is. If you're not in policy, if you're not in politics, And I think that's something that, you know, I as one council person could not change, but I would really love to work with staff, work with whatever engagement staff is already there, and try and find room in budgets to increase engagement so we really are making sure that both the word's getting out, but also, you know, community engagement around the purple line or the gold line isn't just going to all the nonprofits in town, that someone really is taking the time to knock on people's doors, let them know, hey, there's going to be a stop within a half mile of you. Have you been engaged at that? What are your thoughts? You know, I think that's where I try to prioritize as much of my time as I can. I don't know what portion of those 20 to 40 hours are taken up by committee meetings and how much could be spared, but I also would like to lean on my network of fellow residents, fellow activists, and seek advice and support from them when I was running out of time to do that quality engagement, and make sure that the people who I've already had connections with will, you know, really help, you know, utilize this new a door into one of our most powerful non-elected bodies to have some kind of long-term impact for our communities.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
Yeah, so, wow, this is something I think about and talk about almost every day, because many of you are familiar with, you know, the district councils were created, I guess, just a little after the Met Council was initially created. The system was formed in the 70s, and 1972, when district councils were formed, was a time where the wealth and political power of our non-white residents was at possibly a historic low after over, you know, 40, 50 years of really aggressive extractive policies around our housing, around our land, around who could get mortgages, around where new funding was going. And that means that the district council system is one that, when it's not being directly addressed and thought about, it functions in a white supremacist way, because it was created at a time when the power and the people who were creating the system were all landowners, were mostly white landowners, many business owners. But that really, I think it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be constantly and thoughtfully addressed. My work at District 2 has taken us some steps. District 2, also known as Greater Eastside Community Council. We went from having a board that was roughly 95% retired white homeowners to one that is maybe 40% retired white homeowners. There's a long way to go, but I'm very, very proud that going to directly engage low-income residents throughout a lot of those excuse me, those concentrations of poverty that exist throughout the East Side, where residents had never heard of the district council, no one had ever come to their door to talk about land use. Making that effort has started to slowly shift how District 2 operates towards a organizing tool to change structures and really operate in a way that creates political power for its residents. I think that's what all of our political branches should be focusing on: direct democracy and having the most say for the people who get the least tangible power and have the least tangible power to start. And I really hope that in my time at District 2, we'll really be able to solidify some of these gains that we've started to make. Thank you. But it's a constant struggle. And like I said earlier, I think stipends and ensuring that stipends are available for low-income engagement is one start. Another thing that I keep repeating, but you know, making sure that you're going out to find all of the people you want to hear from when you see a gap, not just saying, okay, those, you know, this is a hard, non-English speakers, it's a hard group to reach, so we're not going to try. We're really going above and beyond there is something that I'm always trying to find a way to in the Greater East Side Community Council, and I'm very excited about our new board and where we're going to go. But yeah, I guess that's my whole answer.
Any clarifying questions from? Any final thoughts you might have, Cheryl?
1 minute.
Well, yeah, I guess a final thought that I didn't talk about. You know, along with looking at protections for renters and price controls, one of the approaches I've taken in my organizing on the East Side and across St. Paul is creating new mixed equity projects for wealth creation and development. And I really think the way we develop, you know, it is seeing who's going to build, how can we incentivize that, and then giving them money to do what they're already doing. And I think every investment in affordable housing, we need to ensure it stays permanently here, and we need to ensure that it's democratically controlled by the residents who are going to live there or the residents in that area. And I've spent a lot of time studying how mixed equity ownership can work, how cooperatives and land trusts can be used to partially remove some of that land and housing off the speculative market. But
Well, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
my pleasure. Thank you everyone for your time.
Okay, and next up is, and I hope I don't mispronounce this, Seanne Thomas. Welcome, and thank you for your interest in Met Council and for the Met Council's board. Please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing your pronouns if you'd like.
Thank you for having me this evening and giving me your time. My name is Seanne Thomas, Thomas, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
If you have anything you want to say in the beginning, otherwise we have 3 questions.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I just want to say that I am a tried and true East Sider. I went to Phelan Lake Elementary School, where I was a police patrol. I went to Cleveland Middle School, and I even remember this big riot that we had, a race riot. And you know, my mom is white and my dad is black. And my friends who are white were like, well, which side are you gonna be on? And I'm like, both, right? Both sides, because I'm both. I'm everything. I am the East Side. And I graduated from Johnson High School just a couple years ago, but I did graduate from Johnson High School and went on to get my degree at the university. So, and I run a real estate brokerage. We're small, but mighty, and we live, work, and play on the East Side. And of course, we serve the entire metro area and surrounding areas.
Thank you for being here. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing, and why?
You guys have somehow heard of a bunch of us that are into housing. Right? And because of my background in real estate, obviously housing is very important to me. And I have a son who is about your age, David, and he is also concerned about his ability to be able to, you know, leap from the nest and own his own home. So I am very interested in policy issues around housing affordability and housing access, because you know, if you have stable housing, then the data shows that when you have stable housing, you have a more stable family structure, right? Your children will stay in school, in the same school for longer periods, because you're not moving around due to unstable housing. The parents will actually have energy and time to to economically thrive as opposed to survive day in and day out. The community benefits when people have stable housing in the community because you stay and you get to know the people in your neighborhood, right? You start to build relationships and you engage, you actually engage. And then the community benefits because there's more engagement, there is there's more activity and relationships and less crime and less blight. So stable housing is key to making that happen, and that's why housing affordability and access and closing the homeownership gap between white families and families of color in Minnesota is so super important to me. In 2019, we set out to really dig into that as a brokerage, as a real estate brokerage. And when we talked to the SEIU, the SEIU's number one member concern was housing affordability. While their brothers and sisters that are working in the high wage trades, of course, are out there building all of that housing that is unaffordable and inaccessible to their SEIU brothers and sisters who are lower wage union folks. So that was a real interesting dynamic that we learned. The other thing that we learned in hosting these community conversations is, there are young people, college graduates, that are couch surfing, or they're still at home with mom and dad, or they're living and renting just a room in a shared space, and they're college educated, and they do not believe that they will ever be able to own and participate in home ownership. So we heard from people who did make the leap to home ownership only to be met with neighbors that didn't like the way they looked, and pushed back because they didn't look like them. And so we heard from people who are aging in place that would love to get out of their bread and butter property, but they can't afford or can't envision spending their nest egg on the very expensive, high cost living facilities for people aging out. So they're stuck, and that's bread and butter property that we could have for first time home buyers, but folks are stuck aging in place because they can't afford the options.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Can you tell us a little bit about the public engagement that you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders, please?
Yeah, thank you. I have been an active and engaged member of my community, and I intend to continue to be an active and engaged member in my community. I work with the Eastside Freedom Library, which is one of the very few radical libraries left in the nation. Right here on our east side. Wow. We have a lot of gems, actually. So I work with their housing justice group on issues around housing equity and renters' affordability and home ownership. I work with the City of St. Paul's Emerging BIPOC Developer Program, so I helped to coordinate and recruit developers for that program, and I continue to work with those developers now that they are recipients of Inspiring Communities projects. I serve on the Minnesota Homeownership Center's Opportunity Alliance leadership team, where our work is about closing that homeownership gap in Minnesota. I mean, we have one of the highest rates of homeownership in the nation, And we have one of the most outrageous gaps in homeownership between people of color and white people. I serve on my district council and to engage more diverse voices, and especially the youth voice on that council around, around land use policies and district planning, the district planning process, which we are knee-deep in. And I'm a cohort of the East Side Black Business Network, where we're working on bringing advocacy and technical assistance to BIPOC businesses on the East Side and bringing visibility to businesses that have been historically invisible, bringing some visibility to those businesses. And I continue and will continue to do that work.
Okay. What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
I work in a really niche place with regard to real estate. I work with nonprofit housing developers and for-profit developers. And 90 to 95% of the families that purchase the homes that we build, and we build affordable, quality affordable, new construction housing, as well as, thank you, as well as rehabilitated housing. And 90 to 95% of the families that buy our homes are people of color. And English is not always the first language spoken. So I'm very, very proud of that fact and the work that we do there. And I also work with for-profit developers to bring new and creative ideas to housing and what housing could look like. I've also actively sought out and recruited, as I said earlier, young people and people of color to our district council.
Any clarifying questions from the committee? Any last thoughts you might have for us?
Well, I will say that you have a very difficult decision ahead of you. I am moved by what my predecessors have said, and I'm just excited to be able to be in the space with these folks here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes District 13. And next we'll see who's the folks are here from District 14. Do you know that yet? They're all here. So we're going to roll right along. We'll just take a minute for folks to kind of shift around a bit here, and then we'll get started on District 14.
Everybody except Brian, who had the second speaker.
To the table here. And we have 3 candidates joining us tonight. And first we'll have Toni Carter, and then Matthew Hollinshead, and then Nate Hood. So first up, Toni, and welcome.
Right here?
Yep, right there is the place. That's the hot seat. So we'd like to welcome you and thank you for your interest in the Met Council and serving as a council member. So please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing your pronouns if you'd like.
Thank you. I am Toni Carter, but officially Walitha Carter, that's my birth name. So she, her, hers, and I better spell both of those. Walitha is W-I-L-L-E-T-H-A, Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R. Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
You bet. If you'd like to make any opening statement, and then we have 3 questions.
Appreciate it. I know that we have a very limited amount of time, although it actually does seem like you guys are spreading a little bit. I won't say very much, except to say that I've been in this community for 49 years. I love it. I stayed here after attending Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, but that was 49 years ago. The community that I have come to love is one that has offered my family, my children, the opportunity to grow, to prosper, and to spend time with neighbors who are so very committed to this community that we have found a willingness amongst those we live with and have served with to put elbows together and to get the work done to ensure that this community remains the healthy, vibrant, and safe community that we have all grown to love and want to continue to live in. That is the work that I've been doing as a county commissioner also for these past 18 years. Before that, I served on the school board. I have a lot to say about the importance of that work and the importance of this work as we are all connected together as stakeholders working toward that community we want to remain in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So what policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Well, I'll tell you, as a county commissioner serving on the Ramsey County Board, we have intersected in all areas of the work that the Metropolitan Council does. And I can choose almost any one of those areas of work. In Ramsey County alone, of course, we need 15,000 new affordable units in order to match the need. We continue to need to build out corridors and to ensure service levels and cross-transit paths that will meet our needs. We have to get people to jobs, to services that they need, to school. And I could choose water, I could choose parks. Those are areas where we've engaged as well. But tonight, my greatest concern that I bring to you is the connective tissue of all of that. As I said, the work that we do here at the Metropolitan Council that we can do together, of course, is focused on that healthy, vibrant, and safe community. And tonight I come, along with my neighbors and friends, with a concern that we've had 2 senseless shootings close to our schools and our parks and recreation centers in the past week or so. We have been lamenting together and working together to develop solution. The Metropolitan Council, because of its engagement in all of those areas of infrastructure, can help in the physical space and help in the fiscal space for us to be vibrant as a community. Economic development is important, but the connective tissue that ensures that our children and our families have the ability through each of those areas of leverage to grow, to have their needs met, to see a hopeful future is so very important to us. My children and my grandchildren have attended and do now Central High School, go to Jimmy Lee Recreation Center. It affects us all, whether you're in my neighborhood or the connected neighborhoods of this region. It affects us all that we leverage each area of the work that the Met Council does, and it's not our work alone. Of course, we've got to work with every unit of government. We've got to work with our community organizations. We have to work with individual residents in our community. We have to work with our unions. We have to work with every stakeholder to ensure that that connective tissue in all areas we work in, much like the 2040 plan, which iterates it very well. We can't focus on any one thing and elevate that above the others. But like those outcomes of the 2040 plan, we need to connect them all together. And in the 2040 plan, then, that is what I'll choose. The issue I am most concerned with is the outcome of livability, which includes that aspect of safety that we're all talking about. It's not just safety on transit, by the way, which is the mode in which so many of our children use to go between locations where they need to be. We send them out, we watch after them, we know they're going in between locations, but it is every area of our work. It is parks, it is the water services, it is making certain that we're using transit and housing and creating that livable community for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings and district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. So can you tell us about the public engagement that you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders, please?
And thank you. That is the method that I believe is that way we get to the very best work that we can do. It isn't in our meetings together that we will achieve the best for our communities. That is where we implement. But it is in making certain that we hear from our communities. So as an elected official these past 21 years, I have had the opportunity to connect with community organizations and institutions, with all of our jurisdictions, the elected officials, the leaders of community organizations, and individuals in our community, to listen and to hone the skill of listening into a community engagement that focuses not only on sharing, telling, but on hearing and incorporating the end of that engagement, which is impact to our plans. We at Ramsey County have been able to, and I'm not going to skip that because I'm going to use that in the next answer, but I will simply say that every arena has to be explored, and one of the influences that I will be together with other council members is to make certain that the unit that is the Metropolitan Council and in its committees reaches out and engages, but not just through bringing people into us, of course also going out into our communities, much as I've seen the Met Council has begun to do, and ensuring that we are bringing people to the table and going to the tables that are already constructed to consider the many areas of work that the Metropolitan Council does, not in simply those formal ways, but in neighborhood meetings and homes even. I have always responded to the questions that have been sent to me. Sometimes not in the moment, but I have always been willing to engage with individuals and with organizations. I will continue to do that as an individual. I will do that together with various committees of the Metropolitan Council, and I will reach out to individuals on governing boards and in organizations to ensure that they know about the work we're doing and that we know from them about how it impacts them, particularly those most impacted in the neighborhoods that we're working in, and particularly with a focus on those that we don't hear from, including our communities of low income, or communities of color, our disabled communities, those who can benefit from being engaged, not just in knowing about the project, but those who can benefit from being engaged in working in those projects as well. I'm a strong believer that we do our best work when we bring the thoughts, the voices, and the talents of all of our community to the table.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
I guess I would say that from the very early days of my service on the school, in the community and on the school board, I've worked to engage genuinely with communities and to hear from those most impacted and those least heard. In my early days on the St. Paul School Board, I worked to ensure a strategic plan that focused on equity. That was at a time when we did not all agree of the importance and the criticality of that work. Together on the, I think I may be running out of time.
Yeah, you're running out of
Okay.
time, so wrap up this sentence and then we'll.
All right,
let
thank
go.
you. I thought that minute was per question, but it wasn't. So together with the Metropolitan Council and the Central Corridor Management Committee, we ensured that we were able to construct those 3 missing stops at the time of the initial construction. In Ramsey County, we focused our entire strategic plan on community engagement and equity, with results in the areas of public safety and justice, adult and juvenile, and across the board in Ramsey County, and economic development as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions that anybody has?
Can I ask her, the commissioner, how difficult it was to get Mayor Carter to be a reference for her?
So we did.
Okay. Great, thank you.
My apologies for taking a long time.
Oh, no.
I thought standing out there, those interviews are taking a long time, they're stretching.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up is Matthew Hollinshead. And welcome, and the same thing, thank you very much for interest in the Met Council and serving as a council member. If you could please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing your pronouns if you would like.
Matthews Hollinshead, Hollinshead. He, him. Thank you, Mr. And Madam Co-Chairs, I believe, Co-Chairs.
That's right, yeah.
Members of the nominating committee for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I am serving currently on the Transportation Advisory Board as a transit modal representative. I'm also the conservation chair of the Sierra Club North Star chapter. That's the state of Minnesota chapter. We have 25,000 members and tens of thousands of partners and supporters. We work a lot on environmental justice and in partnership and in coalitions with other groups, one of them being Move Minnesota. And so I just want to, the Met Council from a macro point of view, from 30,000 foot level, the Twin Cities Metro looks wealthy, prosperous, green, healthy, highly educated, forward-looking, but there's a catch. Many of low income, people in communities of color, the working poor, the homeless, retired seniors on fixed incomes without pension, children in poor households, single mothers working multiple jobs, the disabled, those bankrupted by health care do not share in this. The Met Council and others have well documented these disparities hiding just under the surface. So that's kind of one of the guiding principles and ways that I see the metro area. We have a wonderful gloss, but we have a lot of work to do under the surface.
Thank you. What policy issue before the Metropolitan Council are you most interested in addressing and why?
Thank you for the question. My answer is community development. I think I just covered the why, but equally important is the how. The Met Council is involved through its Community Development Guide, Livable Community Grants, the Office of Transit-Oriented Development, city comp plan review, and in other ways. Here are 3 concepts that inform my views. You may have heard of the 15-minute city, currently associated with Paris, where Mayor Hidalgo has made it a signature policy. The idea is to connect as many citizens as possible by 15 minutes walk or bike ride to the destinations on which they depend the most. That's simple in concept, you say, but how do you implement it? Well, my wife and I have lived it for 21 years across the alley from Highland Village. 5 minutes walk to our supermarket, 3 to our clinics, 2 to the pharmacy, 8 to the bank, 10 to the library, and 2 minutes to 7 bus lines. Missing, you'll note, among these destinations are schools and jobs, so that's the next concept. I'm a founding member of what started out as a discussion group, but is evolving into an organization, I guess, called Citizen Advocates for Regional Transit, CART. We put the cart before the horse because that's where it should be. I'm trying to be humorous. We have a 18-year veteran of buying and selling freight rail right-of-way. We have a 17-year veteran of Met Council staff who worked hard on agricultural reserves and regional parks back in the day. We have a mechanical engineer who managed several train air conditioning factories for his career, who lives here now but started out in La Crosse. And we have a civil engineer, also retired, who built or helped design a lot of the big box Home Depot Target sites around the country. So we have come up with something we like to call universal transit mobility, which is very simple. It means anyone can get anywhere in the metro as fast as the automobile, but without driving. It also means moving beyond the outmoded hub and spoke bedroom to office development patterns we're all familiar with. To put it in terms of average speed, regional transit should travel at 25 to 35 miles per hour. Sub-regional transit, which would be exemplified by arterial bus rapid transit, at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and local bus can run at 15 miles an hour average or less. All stops and stations have appropriate ample first mile, last mile services, circulator vans, dial ride, one-way electric car sharing, nice ride bikes, sidewalks, and ADA facilities clean, clear, and safe at all times. Metro Transit's A-Line, ABRT, along Snelling and Ford, has proven that smart crosstown ABRT investments can stimulate substantial bricks and mortar in community development. But transit means much more than to community development than even bricks and mortar, and that's where we come to the last concept I want to touch on, which is corridors of community. That's something I call corridors of community. I was awarded a year's travel and study based on a proposal titled Corridors of Community. And an example I found during that year was the Orange Line dug in Boston, which was covered over with a linear open space, a linear park, and that was lined with mid-price townhomes. That's a bricks and mortar example. But the common, more naturally occurring version is any mobility corridor full of humans interacting and actually interfacing personally and directly. When you're in a car, you're surrounded by a container, and you're not interacting directly with other people. When you're on foot, or when you're cycling, or when you're on transit, you're seeing and interacting and interfacing with people directly, and that creates tolerance, and that creates acceptance of diversity, and that creates the living city, in my opinion. So that's why that's so important with community development.
Thank you. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board meetings and committee meetings and district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Please tell us about the public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders.
I will continue everything that I've been doing and add to it. I served as the president of a community district council for 2 terms and on its board for 12 years. I served on another, a different Highland Park district council for 4 years, representing the Ford site, one of the biggest development sites in the state of Minnesota. And I served a term on the Midway Chamber of Commerce when we were actually changing the culture to support what is now the Green Line. I served on the board at that time. We also, during that my term on the Midway Chamber of Commerce board, we worked with Metro Transit to create the number 3 line through Energy Park because there were a lot of employers, new employers there. I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with that development, which was a legacy of the Latimer years and his successors. And also, I'm a strong believer in and supporter of unions. When you think about workers, I wish that unions had the same membership that they had 40 or 50 years ago. But it is a good place to start, communicating with the members they have and then branching to others. And finally, renters, which is very challenging. We are fortunate in District 14 to have Mitra Jalali, who is a renter, and I believe the first renter in the St. Paul City Council, and has made that a top priority.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you have worked with?
I think we're running out of time, so I'll just be real quick. At my request, I was appointed to an at-large seat on the Citizen Advisory Committee for everybody's favorite transit project, the Southwest Light Rail Green Line extension. Why would an East Metro person who lives in Highland Park want to be there? Because we have a lot.
Wrap up your sentence and we're all done. Yeah, wrap up. You got one sentence and then we're done.
Okay. Because we have in Summit University in Frogtown and East Side St. Paul, we have a lot of people who need access to the job markets and the services of the Southwest Metro. And that is an equity issue to me. So.
Great. Any clarifying questions from the committee? Thank you. Thank you.
I have copies of my remarks. I
don't know if it'd be great to pass them around.
Thank you.
Yep,
thank you very much.
Okay, my guess is your neighborhood.
You nailed it. It's been a long night. Are they giving you snacks or anything? I don't know if I could have made that. You know?
We're doing fine, but thank you very much for being with us tonight and for your interest in the Met Council and for serving on the Met Council board. So please introduce yourself by saying your full name, spelling your last name, and sharing your pronouns if you'd like. If you want to make some introductory remarks, with a total of 10 minutes, we have these 3 questions. So.
Okay, I appreciate it. My name is Nathaniel Hood, or Nate. Last name H-O-O-D. Pronouns are he and him. This is my second time trying to get this job, and as they say, second time's a charm. You know? I do want to thank all the members for being here. Like, it's been a long night. I've only been here since like 7:30, and it's a lot to hear. I'm glad they just kept the group small this year. Yeah, actually, the other thing that I noticed in the hallway is, like now that it's after 9, this is officially the most happening and busy room in downtown St. Paul. All right, I should probably get to the speech, right? This is really a dream job for me. I love the Met Council. I love Metro Transit. This is something that I've wanted to do for about a decade and a half now. So this is just to be in front of you is a great opportunity. This is really what I do in my professional life and what I do in my volunteer capacity. I work as a community and economic development planner at Hennepin County. I work a lot in impacted communities in North Minneapolis and also in suburban business nodes of inner ring suburbs, such as we're just finishing up a project in Crystal, trying to do some facade improvements. We've done some work in Brooklyn Park, done a tremendous amount of work in Richfield and Bloomington. We're trying to get a small business development center in East Bloomington off the ground. So I haven't worked on anything tremendously big, nothing where there's a huge ribbon cutting for, but really that on the ground, city level economic development angle. Like that's what my experience is. And my time on the Highland District Council, I served with Matt. Hey Matt. You know, it's really that engaging people at the block level. We're not even talking neighborhood level, we're talking block level. Now I'm on the city planning commission, and you get up there, right? You're like from the district council, wow, it's like the big leagues. And you get up there, then you realize you're dealing with like a side yard variance of 2.5 feet. But it seems really small when you look at it at the individual level, but then when you like take a step back and you like look at like 3-4 years of work, you're like, oh yeah, we just approved a tremendous amount of affordable housing, right? And that's the type of stuff that I like personally, is just that you're doing those small things, you're just kind of like moving the dial like 1 degree. And that's really my background. I did want to kind of touch on a few things on how I think I would like to be a board member on the Met Council. I don't want to be an accidental tourist. I want to ask questions. I want to make sure that you know, when staff is presenting things, that we're asking the right questions. And I feel like I'd be a good candidate for that, just because I do have that governmental staff level dealing with issues like that, so I can understand staff. But I also come a little from the quasi-political world, where I feel I can ask kind of those questions and how certain things may impact, you know, communities or even blocks. So really my passion, I know that one of the questions is, what would your like area of expertise, what area you care about? I think that we have an opportunity right now coming out of COVID to really jumpstart our transit system, boost ridership. And I also think the ABRT network is fantastic. It's a great product, and I really want to help double down on that, because I think as far as our network build out is concerned right now, that's just such a huge, important step to it. And that's really what I'm most passionate about. So I'll stop now, and if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer those.
Well, my question was, what policy issue before the council are you most interested in addressing and why? You pretty much have answered that, but do you want to be more specific or say anything else?
You've been here a long time, so I'll keep it short. Yeah, you know, transit's key. I mean, it's not just economic development, it's, you know, getting people to see their friends and family. It's something that we need to do, and we need to do reliably and do as frequently as possible, just to make people's lives easier and simpler. You know, I always believe that a good transit system is one where you never actually have to check the times table. You don't need to know, am I going to be stranded downtown if I stay there past 9 o'clock? You know, you don't need to worry about those things. So I think that's really kind of my focus. That would, I mean, hopefully could be my focus, and working to just take that route.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Council members must dedicate 20 to 40 hours monthly for Met Council board and committee meetings, and for district-specific public engagement with stakeholders. Can you tell us about public engagement you commit to doing in your district with community and business stakeholders?
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about something that's not necessarily my community, but something that I did through work. So there's this little school in North Minneapolis off Penn Avenue. It's called the Lucy Craft Laney Community School. We partnered after a roadway reconstruction. It's right on the C line. C line stop at Lowers, about 2 blocks south. We realized we had a curve-facing sidewalk, and parents were having a tremendous time dropping their kids off at school. Snowplows would come, they'd put the snow on the sidewalk, school staff would then get frustrated, they'd throw the snow right back onto the street, and then repeat the cycle. It became an icy mess. We identified this as a problem, and I brought together 4 different agencies I don't know if anybody here works for government agencies, but like aligning 4 different agencies and getting them all on the same page, it's not always easy. And we brought together Hennepin County, the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board for trees. We brought together Minneapolis Public Schools. We brought together the principal of the school. And I learned that sometimes the school district and the schools, they also don't always get along. And we did some great engagement where we had kids design a new plaza for us in front of the school and helped us design the sidewalk. We also went out with some second graders as part of this project and engaged them, and they wanted to see trees. So what we did is we leveraged a project through Hennepin County's Energy and Environment to plant some trees at the school. And we did that with the kids. They're not very good with shovels, so I actually ended up injuring my back during that, doing a little extra work, but you know, it was well worth it. But we got those agencies together. As far as engagement, we engaged the agencies and we engaged individual agency staff. We engaged the school, the principal, parents who are just doing drop-off, right? These are disengaged parents just asking questions like, how's drop-off going for you? And then we interviewed the students and we had them help to design part of the plaza. Believe it or not, the kids' feasibility wasn't a huge issue for them in some of their plaza designs, but we tried to do what we could. So that was an example of community engagement, and I think that's deep community engagement where you're engaging all stakeholders and you're trying to find a common ground with a relatively modest budget. So, there's one more question, I forget what that last one was.
What have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or organization you have worked with?
Yeah, I think Lucy Laney is really a classic case of that, right? You're taking a school in North Minneapolis, you're engaging them, and again, you're doing a pretty small project, right? You're redoing a plaza, you're setting the sidewalk back, and you're just making it like a little easier for somebody to get dropped off at school. And I think, thank you. I think that a lot of the equity work that we do, and not to criticize any agency that I may work for, but we often take these like really big picture approaches, and those are absolutely needed, but we oftentimes forget what those short-term solutions are, or short-term responses, I think are a better answer. Like as it pertains to Metro Transit, why don't we find our busiest bus stops and make sure that those are shoveled out? That's not a big, exciting thing, but that's like a little bit of equity. That's what people care about. They care that the bus stop's shoveled out, that they don't need to skip leg day because they've had to like already leap over a pile of snow to get onto the bus, right? And I think improving frequency to the communities and the neighborhoods that are most likely to take transit, like something like that, I think is probably the best thing that we could do best thing that Met Council could do in the near term to address on those equity goals. 1 minute in the last one. So I helped start a group called Sustain St. Paul that advocated for affordable housing and better bike ped infrastructure on the Ford site. And one of the key things that we wanted on this was we wanted to ensure that affordable housing was included on that. And especially in a place like Highland that doesn't have a lot of affordable housing. I mean, stuff's pretty expensive. So we thought that was pretty key, and we fought pretty hard for that, and I was very happy with the outcome on that. And that wasn't just me, by the way. That was a huge group of people, Matt included in that as well. But as far as my neighborhood and engagement is concerned, that was one example of that.
Any clarification questions from any of the committee members? Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Actually, if I have any more time, do you mind if I make one other quick? Do I have any?
8 seconds or more.
8 seconds or more. There's a guy who got COVID, and his name is Brian Martinson. He's a great guy. I know that this is a great opportunity to see people in person and present yourself. Unfortunately, Brian got COVID, but he's a great guy. Please hear him out, and he's got a good public health background and a great resume, so please give him a fair shot in his presentation. He would be a great rep.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. And we're going to do that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that kind of concludes our hearing from our finalists tonight. This was truly an incredible cohort of candidates. Thank you for your interest in the position and serving your region. I also want to say thank you to the nominating committee for your time tonight. This was the first of 4 interview nights, and we look forward to working with you during this process. In case you weren't here at the beginning of the meeting, I want to highlight the next steps again. Following the public interviews that are concluding on Tuesday, January 31st, the nominating committee will make candidate recommendations to the governor and lieutenant governor for their consideration as possible Metropolitan Council members. The governor will make the final decision on who will represent the Metropolitan Council and has until March 6, 2023 to do so. So thank you again for joining us and have a good night. The meeting is adjourned.